Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary.
Insurrection Act, under what conditions or terms would you?
Well, I'd do it if it was necessary. So far, it hasn't been necessary, but we have an Insurrection Act for a reason. If I had to enact it, I'd do that. If people were being killed and courts were holding us up, or governors or mayors were holding us up, sure, I'd do that. I mean, I want to make sure that people aren't killed. We have to make sure that our cities are safe. And it's turning out, and we started with D.C. It's been so successful.
Insurrection Act.
All right, shalom to the elect of Israel. I want to start by giving all the praises, honor, and glory to whom it rightfully belongs, which is Yahweh, Bahashem Yahweh Shai, Bahashem Rechakodash. And what I said was all the praises, honor, and glory belongs to Yahweh, who is the Heavenly Father, whom the world ignorantly calls God, in the name of his Son, Yahweh Shai, who is the Messiah, whom the world ignorantly calls Jesus, in the name of the Holy Spirit, which in Hebrew is Rechakodash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone that rule well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. And as you see, this is Trump, and this came out 3 days ago from today. This is at the Independent News article, I believe. It says Donald Trump says he's willing to enact the Insurrection Act, but so far it hasn't been necessary. The Insurrection Act of 1807 allows the president to dispatch active duty military in states that are unable to put down an insurrection or are defying federal law. Trump wants to do this. Things could quickly really escalate into full-blown Jacob's trouble, man. All right, if Donald Trump was to actually enact this. Now let's look a little bit into this act here. This Insurrection Act of 1807 on Wikipedia. The Insurrection Act of 1807 is the U.S. federal law that empowers the President of the United States to nationally deploy the U.S. military and to federalize the National Guard units of the individual states in specific circumstances, such as the suppression of civil disorder, of insurrection, and of armed rebellion against the federal government of the U.S. And let me just add, we know that looking from past protests and things like that, right? We know that there's been a lot of, agents in that. Okay, we know that there's been a lot of, agents, put in there by Esau, okay, to make it so that, it gives ground to cause these things, all right, to cause certain things to happen, to give them ammo to call for whatever, for example, we seen like back in 2020, you had agents or whatever supplying people with bricks or stuff like that, the LA riots, that happened not too long ago, they had people, then that thing come out where people could sign up for, sign up to protests, to cause anarchy. We ultimately know Esau, was a cunning hunter, and he comes with that problem, reaction, solution. Okay? We know this is the thing, we know these are one of the tactics of the devil, all right, to come with that problem, reaction, solution. You see? And the problem, they would cause a problem, right? And it would cause some type of problem to happen, and you see with this whole ICE thing, okay? Say they start adding, people into that, and just give us some speculation. Say they start adding people into people, like rebellious people to start rebelling against ICE or whatever. Just say they add that in there, all right, or say it gets out of hand another way. They get the reaction or whatever, or say ICE does something, or they get the reaction of the people. And now they come with this, say the people start uprising violently against ICE and everything. Then they come with this, then he enacts the Insurrection Act, Once again, say there's a problem, say ICE, I'm just giving an example of what could possibly happen. Say ICE does something, because really that's the main thing going on right now, these ICE agents going around, right? And then Trump calling about the crime as well, right? say, either ICE does something or, Esau, because now Esau has these masks to where they could just put it over their faces and disguise themselves as Jake, right? Where they have these masks and they, can do stuff and cause crime in the neighborhood and then escape somewhere secret and take it off and walk around like they never did it. Meanwhile, portraying the face of a Jake. You see? And then, say you get reaction, just thinking of some ways they could come with. But, ultimately, we know one way or another, a certain avenue that the Lord has set up, all hell is going to break loose. All right? But it says the Insurrection Act provides a statutory exception to the Posse Comitatus Act of 1878 that limits the president's deploying the U.S. military to enforce either civil law or criminal law within the United States. So this Posse Comitatus Act, it says the Posse Comitatus Act is a U.S. federal law signed on June 18th, 1878 by President Rutherford B. Hayes that limits the use of federal that limits the use of federal military personnel to enforce domestic law by the federal government or by other government entities such as county sheriffs and justices of peace. So this Posse Comitatus Act, it basically limits, basically the military. It limits the enforcement of the military, all right, within, the streets that citizens live in and all of that, right? But this Insurrection Act, that suspends it. So therefore, that would give the president ability to let the military walk throughout the streets and stuff, right? It says, after invoking and before exercising the powers authorized under the Insurrection Act, Title 10 USC, says requires the publication of a presidential proclamation whereby the U.S. president formally orders the dispersion of the peoples committing civil unrest or on rebellion. So basically, he would have to make a declaration telling everybody to stop rebelling and all of that, Which ultimately, man, this is all set up, all right? Ultimately by the Lord, okay? But one way or another, stuff is going to happen, okay? But this could be an example of a martial law happening, This could be a way for martial law to happen. If martial law happens, man, yeah, you in Jacob's trouble, man, okay? I'm going to go ahead and, so real quick, the book of Revelation 12 and verse 12. Therefore rejoice, ye heavens, and ye that dwell in them. Woe to the inhabitants of the earth and of the sea, for the devil is come down unto you, having great wrath, because he knoweth that he hath but a short time. And starting with our apostles and elders of Great Millstone, right? We told you here at Great Millstone that, and the like-minded brothers that teach the same doctrine of GMS, we told you Israelites out there that we told you, our apostles told you years ago that all hell is going to break loose, and the recordings of them saying it is still out there. They told you years ago that all hell is going to break loose. They told you that you're going to be getting hauled off in the concentration camp. They told you martial law is coming. Told you all of these things, man. And people were scoffing at them, saying it ain't going to happen. Well, the big we told you so is coming. So, hey, Trump, and I can see Trump definitely being that cruel Lord. I'm going to get that. Isaiah chapter 19, verse 4. And the Egyptians will I give over into the hand of a cruel Lord, and a fierce king shall rule over them, saith the Lord Yahweh of hosts. Okay? So, and by the way, I also was thinking, because somehow, I'm still trying to see somehow, if somehow, well, not if, but, if it happens this way, using the military or whatever, I just want to see how they're going to turn it towards us. Us like-minded brothers, I want to see how they're going to possibly come after, those who call themselves Hebrew Israelites with this. That's what I want to see. All right. Because if so, that's Revelation, the 12th chapter and the 17th verse. And the dragon was wroth with the woman, and the dragon being Esau. Just talking about in this time now. And the dragon, well, it's like as the apostle mentioned back then as well, the apostle mentioned when he was breaking it down that, this also applied to back during the time of 70 AD. But, it also applies to now. It says, and the dragon was wroth, meaning angry with the woman being Israel, right? And went to make, because you read in verse 1, it talks about a woman. Revelation 12:1, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and a moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And the 12 stars being the 12 tribes of Israel. This woman represents the Israelites. Revelation 12:17. And the dragon was wroth with the woman. The dragon, Esau, okay? And went to make war with the remnant of her seed. All right? The dragon went to make war with the remnant of her seed. Who's the remnant? The elect, which keep the commandments of Yahweh and have the testimony of Yahweh Shai HaMashiach. Okay? That's what the elect are going to do. Have the testimony of Yahweh Shai and keep the commandments of Yahweh to the best of their ability. So there's going to come a point in time where Esau is going to come after the elect, man. Let me get this. So I just want to see, if this is the way that it can happen. Revelation, Slaki, 2 Ezra chapter 16 and verse 70. It says, for there shall be in every place and in the next cities a great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord. A great insurrection upon those that fear the Lord, man. What does insurrection mean? If you look it up, it means uprising, a violent uprising. It's going into when Esau somehow, some way is going to come after the elect. And I want to see, because remember, Trump, before he got in office, remember, what did he say? He said that there's people that say that the world is going to end in the Middle East. He said there's prophets that say the world is going to end in the Middle East. If I'm getting it, I think I'm saying it correctly. If I'm not, Salaki, but he's talking about us though. You see, so he knows about the Hebrew Israelites. He knows about us, man. He knows about us. Okay? So don't forget that. But ultimately, somehow, some way, one day, Esau is going to come after, the elect. And not only the elect, but all who say that they're Hebrew Israelites. Regardless of what camp you're in. One day it's coming. This is prophecy right here. This whole chapter 216 goes into end time prophecy, like the last days, man. Okay? So this is coming. All right? But we know that this can also, Revelation chapter 2, verse 10. Fear none of those things which thou shalt suffer. Behold, the devil Esau shall cast some of you into prison, that you may be tried. And ye shall have tribulation 10 days. Be thou faithful unto death, and I will give thee a crown of life. So we know that Esau is going to eventually, cast some brothers, into prison. Eventually he's going to, toss some brothers off in the concentration camps, etc. We know that. Okay? And this, once again, looking at the possibilities, this could be a possible way that this happens with Trump deploying. Because say he, acts the Insurrection Act. Now he's utilizing the military. Let me just, real quick, because I don't know how much battery I got left. Let me just type this in. What would happen if the Insurrection Act was used? It says, invoking the Insurrection Act will grant the president broad authority to deploy U.S. military forces domestically for law enforcement purposes. While this action suspends the limitations of the Posse Comitatus Act, which typically restricts military involvement in domestic policing, it does not enable the declaration of martial law. But, I mean, if it happens, you can obviously see that things could lead up to Trump, declaring martial law. Okay? But says consequences of invoking the act. Domestic military deployment, active duty military troops, and federalized National Guard units can be deployed to the location of unrest. This gives them powers typically reserved for civilian law enforcement, such as making arrests and controlling crowds. So now it's not just the police controlling crowds. Now you got military, around you, man. Says heightened tensions. Invoking the act can significantly escalate conflicts and generate controversy. In recent history, governors have opposed attempts to deploy troops into their states, leading to legal challenges. All right. And, they give, their view of what could possibly happen, some consequences. But we know the prophecies of the Lord are going to happen regardless. So, the Lord, as he said, through the prophet Isaiah, um, he, he makes peace and creates evil. Okay. So just seeing where things can lead to, you got to, look for these things because they're prophecy, right? So just say, Trump enacts it. Now you got the military throughout, okay? And say something, say more up, protests and riots increase or civil unrest increase, which is looking like, Lord willing, will happen, because everybody is fed up with Trump and stuff he's doing. Nobody really likes this man, except for his supporters and all of that. And I saw something on Redacted talking about a civil war, which I'm going to look into after this, Lord willing, right? But just, say, the uprisings happen, and then it gets to a point where Trump declares martial law. And now military, whatever, is in the streets, They say, somehow, some way, stuff, turns to where they come after the elect, all right? Brothers try to continue going out, to preach. And because when you have martial law, you have a curfew. So you could be out only for a certain amount of time. So, say brothers continue to go out, right? And then, the government gets notice of it. And now they say, you can't, etc. or whatever, and they start coming after brothers, So some brothers, eventually, are going to get put into these government facilities or concentration camps or, wherever Esau takes them at for this Revelation 2:10 to be fulfilled. But also, one thing I wanted to make note of too was you got to remember, when they come after the elect, however they do it, some brothers are going to get this right here. Isaiah 59:19, so shall they fear the name of the Lord from the west and his glory from the rising of the sun. When the enemy, Esau, shall come in like a flood. Well, that's his, troops, his government vehicles and vans. When he comes down against the elect like that, it says the spirit of Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai shall lift up a standard against him. And that word standard in the Hebrew is nawas, which means escape. So the Lord going to have certain brothers escape. Now think about it. If you're a regular man that the Lord isn't dealing with, how are you going to escape around how are you going to escape out of a situation like that? It's one of you and a whole bunch of Esau's troops. How the hell are you going to escape? Because remember, they're going to come in like a flood. Okay, so there's going to be a bunch of them come with a destructive force, man. Maybe surrounding your house, kicking your door in, flanking any direction you could run out of. So just think, you're a regular man without the Lord. How the hell is you going to be able to get out of this? See? You won't. So this means that the Lord's going to have to, he's going to have to give brothers divine abilities, man, aka spiritual power, okay, where to escape out of the situation, where you could be to the point where you might disappear. Lord could give you power to fly away, or he can give you spiritual powers to fight their asses right back, man. All right, this devil he's not going to touch all of the elect. All right, when he comes down with this, when he comes down with that great wrath and against the men of the Lord, he's not going to touch all of the elect, man. Things are going to change, all right? He's not touching all of the elect. Certain brothers this devil can't touch. I'm going to say it again. Certain brothers this devil cannot touch, man. And that's just what it is. Regardless of, who's in office. All right, the Most High has the ultimate say-so. Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai has the ultimate say-so, man. All right? And ultimately, man, this devil is fallen. And we knew that these prophecies were coming. We knew it was coming. All right? And that even just gives us a peace of mind knowing what's coming. But this is the book of Isaiah 42:9. Behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. Right? And so before these prophecies, come to pass, the Lord, made it known by his prophets, man. Okay? But I really wanted to get into that Insurrection Act and the fact that some of you Akim out there, like-minded brothers that teach the doctrine of Great Millstone, some of you brothers are going to get spiritual powers when this devil comes after you, man. Now, he ain't going to be able to get his hands on every brother. All right? Some brothers are going to get spiritual powers, and that's thus saith Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai. Okay? So, I'm going to just leave it at that, man. With that, giving all praises, honor, and glory to Yahweh Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Chakwadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, every well. Peace, blessings, and salutations to the elect. Shalom to the elect.